Welcome, friends, to the Pioneers of the Independent Networks. I'm your host, Ricky Blues. This is your co-host, Lord Timothy Walker. And friends, if you've joined us in the past, you know that we bring to you all the promotions, the organizations, the matches, the feuds, the characters that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene for the last 5 decades. We're talking from the early 70s to today. Tim, now we've reached into the 5th decade. Think about it, 2020. We're at the end of one, at the beginning of another.
We're still kicking.
Still kicking. This is season 7. Almost 150 episodes under our belt.
That's a lot.
That is good stuff. And we're happy to be here to bring you season 7 of Pin. Tim, every week we talk about something new, right?
We do.
This week we have a very important guest. First time on the show.
Very handsome young man.
Yeah, I think he gets that from his father. It might be something that runs in the family, but I'm just not sure. What do you folks think? We'd like to introduce you to, you know him as RK Blues. It's my legitimate, my shoot son. Welcome to the show, RK.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here, brother.
Tim.
Good to see you.
So we are doing something that's a little unique for this show, for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk to you about a time that we were able to do something very special in this business, and that is have that old-fashioned family feud. So just like any story, Tim, don't you think it's best to start at the beginning?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay, so RK, what drew you to wrestling? What brought you to that dance?
So I was in it for the athletic aspect of it and the pure wrestling of what is wrestling.
What made you choose wrestling? You could have done anything. Why wrestling?
Seeing you doing it when growing up and knowing the challenges and a little bit of the inside stuff, or what I thought was knowing a little bit of the inside stuff of the business and everything, kind of just, tempted you to get into it and see what it was really about.
Mm-hmm. So even though, and this is something that our audience may enjoy, even though you're the son of someone who's been involved in the wrestling business for a period of time, you were never really smartened up until you got your chance to get in there. See, that's what you're supposed to do. That's the way that you conduct business. You don't give it, right? Everybody, no matter who it is, they have to earn it. Tim, I mean, that's the very first, the primary role in the business. Make them earn their way in. That's so right. Even though you got a chance to see it, right? You never had that smartened up until you got there, till you actually started to learn and started to become part of.
Right.
See, Hydraulics cannot count out RK Blues, his opponent tonight, because I'll tell you what, this kid reminds me so much of the 1-2-3 Kid, it's unbelievable.
Referee D. Edwards over citing this match. Here comes the lockup. RK Blues showing his athletic ability, trying to reverse.
Oh, and he does reverse, and he takes the Hydraulics right now. Landing the right hands and forearms.
Now RK Blues.
I was fortunate coming in with you being my father anyway, because then I was kind of already in a little bit with some of the older guys like Bruce, Rich, Dwayne. They liked me from the get-go, so that kind of gave me a little bit of a leg up.
A little inside track.
Right. I was fortunate that, I came in saying, okay, I didn't have to go, what do I do from here? You guys were already veterans, so it was like, just try and follow what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
pick it up and learn.
Yeah, yep. And I was told, shut up, listen, and do what you're told to do, no matter what it is. Okay. And this is the most Tim's ever heard me really speak, because of that. That's just how we did it, to try and learn.
Well, Tim, impart a little bit of that old school locker wisdom on us. I mean, what's the rules about being seen and not heard?
Well, you're exactly right. When you break in, your job is to listen and take in everything rather than espouse your opinion. You have to be a respected member of the society before you start adding your 2 cents into the mix.
And that's the way it has to be. So no matter what your pedigree is coming in and how fortunate you are or were not to have someone on the inside, It's all about earning your bones. And that's what you had to do. And that's one of the things I hope that you understood as a father to a son was I didn't want to hand it to you. I wanted you to earn it. And that would give you credibility, and that would help you earn people's respect.
Seeing you doing everything that you were doing in wrestling and all that, I thought, if he could do it, maybe I can do it and everything. And so I had showed interest in learning some of the wrestling stuff with you and everything. And I saw your journal later and all that. I went and looked when he wasn't around quick to see how I was doing with the training and everything. And it was, basically said in there that if he bumped poorly, I just wasn't going to talk to him about it tomorrow. So we weren't going to do it no more if I couldn't learn just the very basics of stuff. Because as a son coming into it, and you being my father, you knew that it's dangerous. It is very dangerous when it's, it's a sport, but it's not a sport. It's sport entertainment. So you have to trust the guy that's in there with you. And to trust him, you have to trust the way that he was trained. And it's very muddied with who is trained by who and how somebody gets into it and how long and everything. I mean, I had guys walk up to me when I got in because I looked really young and all that. And, they were asking me how long I'd been into it and thought I was 17 when I was 22 years old. And I had been asked, oh, your dad trained you. That might have been nice. Well, you could think that way, but then you have to think that my dad's been in this business. He's been hurt in this business. He knows what it is to be hurt. So he wants to show you that you can get hurt. So now he's got to teach you how to protect yourself and how to take care of the other guy that's in the ring with you, because that's important. Everybody's got to walk away, just as good as when they came into the ring.
Right, same way you entered that match is the same way you're supposed to be leaving.
Right. And now, so some of the stuff, like some of the old school stuff that you had, I've been fortunate that you had told me that I was smart to was, don't be crushing anybody's hand when you get in there and all that, because they're going to know how green you are and everything else and all. So I went in and did that, and the first time I went to shake some of these guys' hands like that, they were crushing my hand. I was like, okay, so either he doesn't know what he's doing, or this is a rib. Some kind of something's going on here. And then I was also told that, look, behind there, you don't necessarily speak the same way that you speak and all that. I was showing some of the Carney stuff to speaking some Carney. So I was like, all right. And the whole time that I had done it, I had not heard one thing of Carney, Tim.
Really?
I was like, huh?
Even when you went down south into Tennessee?
Tennessee, I didn't hear any of that stuff. But when I went to Tennessee, that was new to me. And I was told very good things about down in Tennessee. And they were all very cool guys and everything. But I sat in my corner and just kind of watched and listened. And I was fortunate to have those guys who had been traveling down there and all that. I mean, Vordell was there when we were there. And I mean, he's awesome. So I just kind of sat there quietly. Didn't hear one Carney word, but it was back there with the boys.
There were a lot of people there that had a lot of experience doing local television, too.
Right.
And I think that was a really good experience for you. I'm sure you learned a lot that weekend.
I did. I learned I like Tennessee, too. There's a lot of nice people down there just in general. And the wrestling was totally different.
Oh, it is.
It was more of the like catch-as-catch-can chain wrestling that I was used to.
Right.
Oh, he went for the shoulder tackle when Agent Orange went down. Coming off. Is he going for a victory roll? No, turns into a sunset flip. Agent Orange goes down. There's a cover and only a 2. As the kid almost got it done. And going right back into that deep steamboat-like arm drag.
I'll tell you what, Agent Orange's got to be a little frustrated at this point.
I'm outside the Knoxville Civic Coliseum in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. The Coliseum is a very historic building for wrestling. Wrestlers like Bob Armstrong, Andre the Giant, Rugged Ronnie Garvin, Ricky and Robert, the Rock and Roll Express, the Heavenly Bodies, Jim Cornette, have all appeared in this building at one time or another. It's the home of the original Southeastern Championship Wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and many other promotions throughout the years.
But the first match I ever had, I was sitting in the back and I was talking to the guy. I was wrestling Drolix. And we're sitting there talking, and what I was told to ask the guy is, what would you like to do? Because I'm new coming into it, so I'm not going to go in and say, this is what we're going to do, here. It's, what would you like to do? What do you do? And he had said to me, do you know what a potato is? I said, yeah. He said, do you know what a receipt is? And I said, yeah. And everybody else was laughing because he hadn't been down the train with me yet and everything. And then afterwards I said, hey, are we good? And he goes, oh yeah, you're light as can be with all that. And I said, okay, cool.
Wait a second. She was on the other foot. RK Blues capitalizing on the distraction of Kindred at ringside.
And you know, of course, wherever Kindred is, there's Evelyn Crow. You can always count on where one is, the
RK
other.
Blues comes to the pin, 1-2. Drolic's able to kick out. Now this is very interesting. Could this be payback for last week on this very program when Drolic's came out during Kindred's match in the opening matchup last week?
I would say very much could be. That's for sure. Oh, look at this. Up and oh no, he does. Oh, he catches him. Uh-oh. That's a submission hold, Mark Bray. Looks like he's gonna give. Can he do it? Oh, he taps out. He rings the bell on him.
He's a really cool guy and all that. Yeah. And I was putting him over in that one. You know, he gave me, it was like it's his version of like almost like a Taz mission that he does and all that. But yeah, he asked me, you know what a receipt is? Yes. And his buddies laughed at him. Everybody that was there with him, and he said, he's a big boy. We're gonna clear this up now.
Wow, that was pretty good.
But it was cool. They were always very nice, and MCW and all that too. I never really had any kind of
and I think
issues with
exactly, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later because MCW did you a solid. Dan McDevitt particularly did you a solid. So we'll make sure that we talk about that and you know let the folks know out there. I mean, it was a great time. It really was.
Yeah, very cool place to work with. It was different, like you said, doing there, and then did a little bit of the Pennsylvania stuff with some organizations that weren't quite as ready. They had all the one desire in the world, but didn't know how to do what they wanted to do, and that was where you kind of run into a little bit of your problems. Like, this guy's saying stuff we can't even say here, Tim, and he's a face. So you know how to be a face.
Right.
I was a heel. I didn't talk. I was a heel.
Well, now we've heard a little bit about your background and how you broke into wrestling. I have a question for you, Ricky Blues.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How did you feel about Will getting involved in wrestling?
That is a great question. And honestly, from the start, I didn't want it. I wanted more for him than just that. Because I knew how, I don't want to say languished I was, but I knew how, because of my other profession, I knew how compartmentalized I was. I mean, I had the offers for Saudi. I had the offers for Rio with Bill Brown down in Florida. The stuff with Japan. I had all those things that were on the table that I always had to say no to because they were 6 weeks or more trips that I never could have committed to because of what else I was doing. And Will had gotten into a profession aside from this that was really putting, you know, the bread and butter on his table for his family. So I looked at him in the same light that, okay, maybe you don't want to go here. You want to go to something that is continuously going to pave that way for you, feed your family. And as a father, you always think about that. I saw the trappings, the ups and downs. I mean, Tim, you and I could sit here and probably talk 3-4 hours on just who has died in this business through the demons that they've invented for themselves. And they weren't bad people. Every one of those, the boys that we could talk about were good guys. And they got into this business with all the greatest hopes and brightness in their eyes and smiles that they could possibly have. And then life happens and it takes them from us. And that was one of the things that I was scared to death with. Not saying that RK wouldn't make his own choices, his right choices, but doesn't matter sometimes. Sometimes you're a victim of circumstances. And I didn't want to introduce him to a pathway that could have led to him being a victim of his own circumstances. I wanted to make sure that he was absolutely ready. Some of the guys and girls that we know that have gotten into this at 14, 15, 16 years old, and they're absorbed so deeply into it that they never are able to pull themselves out of it until it's too late, and then we're back at another funeral. And I know the boys and girls that were in the business with us along the way could talk for hours too about all the guys and girls who've passed as from their demons from this business. So that made me exceptionally apprehensive about going into this. I
understand that. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times people lose their perspective.
Right.
On what's reality and what's not reality.
Right.
And I think they get caught up in it. People that live it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I think sometimes get so caught up in it, so caught up in the lifestyle, so caught up in what they're doing, that they lose that thing that grounds them.
Right.
And I think that leads to a lot of problems. I've seen that with people like Eddie Gilbert that
Oh,
just
absolutely.
lived it 24
Absolutely.
hours a day, 7 days a week, and just there's just no break. It was just the gas pedal was just pressed all the time.
Look how close we all were to Chris Candido. I mean, every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for years straight, Chris, John Rector, all of us were together in different capacities, and they had that same want and desire. You know, so, I mean, everybody understands and knows the name Eddie Gilbert, and they know Chris Candido, but there is that backstory to it that it's exactly that same thing. So hungry that they're consuming themselves instead of, you know, being able to get to where they want to, because it's like drugs. I just need that little bit more to get my next, that little bit more. Well, now I have a tolerance here, so I got to get a little bit more, a little bit. It's exactly the same thing. It is a dance that is very, very dangerous.
And they don't hit the brake pedal.
Right.
And it just leads to their bad ending.
And with RK, that's when he said, "Dad, this is what I want to try. I want to give it a very good effort and see what I can do with it." That was one of the talks that's a very hard talk to have with your child, but it's especially being that they want to get into the same profession, but it's something that you have to do to let them know this is exactly the trappings that are there. These are the demons. He grew up with Hack Myers, Don Haviland. Don Haviland was my best friend in life. Hack knew them from the time that they were born. We lived, you know, one street over from each other, and he was there all the time. So I acquiesced because I knew that he had a little bit more people there to guide him and be with him and to be able to jerk him up by his collar and say, "Oh, don't go that direction." But we did. I sat him down and said, "If you do, this is what you got to watch out for." And I smartened him up to that, to understanding that. And I think it would be apropos, Will, for you to talk a little bit about that experience. What the apprehension that you would have had, you know, going in, understanding those things about this business.
Right, and that's a side of wrestling that nobody really talks about or nobody warns you and everything. And a lot of guys going with all the talent in the world and, like you said, all the want and desire and everything, and not knowing about the dark side of that, or like you were referring to and all that, that's referred to as the sickness. So I can wrestle now, but I'm going to continue to wrestle, or, you know, I can always have one more match and everything else that goes along with that. And then even sometimes, you know, with the dangers of everything, like we had talked before about, so if you're getting into it, you got to, you know, talk about this is, you know, the kind of moves that I want to do and everything. So it's not just that the wrestling is dangerous as well, because you used to do the top rope Frankensteiner. And I said, well, okay, well, how about if I do something like that? And you said, okay, here's the problem I ran into. If you do it tonight, you got to do it tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day. And he said, each time you do it, it gets a little bit more dangerous than the time before. And, so, and you have to take it to the next level. So after I do the Frankensteiner, now what I have to do? Now I have to do the reverse standing poison Frankensteiner off the top, and now it's getting out of hand, getting crazy.
Right. It is. It's a roller coaster. It
Right.
is. And you got a chance to see that.
I had a bump though that stopped me from doing any of that kind of stuff. He wanted me to be as athletic as him and all that, and he's very athletic and all that. I'm a little more robotic. I'm a little more robotic about things and all that. And so he says, do the front roll, jump up onto that second turnbuckle, spin, front flip, and land for a leg drop, for an ass bump. I said, all right, did all that for him, and then rolled out of the ring. I said, I'm back. That was the last time I did any of that. And that was the second rope.
That's why you're wrestlers and I'm a photographer.
Knocked the wind out of me. Rich was in the ring for that one too.
Well, and you know, speaking of what you said, and just mentioning Rich, talking about Rich Myers, Ramblin' Rich, one half of the Holy Rollers. I've known Rich way back in the backyard days. That's where Rich and I really met and started. Rich summed it up, what we just talked about, very eloquently with a statement. Everyone, and this is what he says, everyone has a plan to get into the business, no one has a plan to exit from. And we talked about that years ago. Dwayne and myself sat down, when doing research for the book, Tim, you remember that. And that was one of the things that Rich said, and that was in like 2000, and maybe 2002 or 3. And that stuck with me forever because that is exactly the truth, and it's exactly what we talked about here today.
That's one of the smartest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, and it absolutely is. And I think that sums up some of those dangers. And what we've talked about here in the opening segment of this is, what was the plan and how were we going to affect it? Where were we going to go with it?
Knowing that your dad was a very respected wrestler throughout the Mid-Atlantic area and beyond the Mid-Atlantic area, did you feel any pressure to live up to the expectation of the blues tradition?
I thought I did him justice by the way that I could take care of the other guys. I can take care of myself in the ring. He's obviously he's bigger than I am, and it's a big man's business, and he's a small guy at 6 foot. So I'm at 5'8", so I'm an even smaller guy. So one of the things he told me was, if you're gonna be short, you have to put on weight and take care of yourself. You have to be able to protect yourself in case something happens. So not a whole lot of pressure, anything like that to perform. Just to be careful, take care of yourself, and take care of the other guy at the same time. If I was gonna do it, I was all in, and that's how he is with everything as well. Everything is all in. So I knew that any time that I wasn't doing something to the point where he would be impressed or proud with and all that we had a long trip back from Maryland every day. We were going to stop, grab some hamburgers, and talk about it. And a lot of times we talked about the good stuff and everything, but a lot of times it was like, you should have thrown your kicks in harder. And then the next time we would be down there training, he would kick me and be like, that's how you land a kick in. So it would be good stuff like that, but he would compliment me as in, this is what you're doing right, and this is the right way to think about it and all that, and this is what I think you should be doing with it. What do you think? And stuff like that. But as far as like the other guys pressuring, I think they thought that I was going to be a whole lot more like him than what I was, because in my eyes, I know him, obviously personally and everything, that I see how, he is outside of the business and inside of the business, and he's a little bit more of like an extrovert than what I am. I'm kind of a little more introvert, stay to myself and everything. So I think they expect me to be that way, and I think they were happy with the way that I could work and the wrestling and all, but trying to get me to actually get into character and everything else, I think was a little bit more difficult for those guys. You got to help develop a character was kind of the hardest thing for me, and I never really felt very much pressure, but I don't think that I went into wrestling saying, I'm going to be the next big thing that there's going to be. I went in saying, this was something that I know my dad enjoyed. I enjoyed seeing him do it. I think I could get some enjoyment out of this. And I never looked at it as like a money value kind of thing, or where can I go next. No, I was just having a good time while we were doing it. And like you said, how often do you get to do that with your dad?
Not only building yourself up physically as being big muscles and that sort of thing, but I think like one of the other things is your cardio ability, because if you don't have that ability to keep going and you gas out, then if you're so gassed and you're so tired, you're going to have trouble even lifting your own hands to protect yourself. So in addition to that, did you do a lot of cardio work too?
Fortunately, I was thin from the beginning. What we had done was a lot of like heavy bag kind of stuff that conditions almost like your core and makes your body strong. And we did it for a longer amount of time. So we would take like a heavy...
It's endurance training.
Yeah.
So it is cardio, but it's cardio endurance.
Yeah, we didn't really run and all. And we had actually been training a bunch before I'd even stepped into a ring. So I knew a little bit about the catch-as-catch-can or the arm work and stuff, and I had no idea how to step into a ring. I stepped into a ring, and there's certain things that you have to do in a ring so that everybody is all on the same page and everything. So that was a little bit odd, too, to learn the ring after the fact and all. A lot of my first bumping was just done right on the ground, on grass or anything like that. So the only way you knew that you bumped right at first was if you knocked the wind out of yourself, because then you were landing flat. Well, then it was about, well, how much does he really want to get into this and all? let him bump around, take a couple hard bumps, and see if he still wants to do this.
One of the things, Arcade, that you got a chance to experience is, and this is worth its weight in gold, when you were able to get into the business and get introduced, there was several people that were running promotions. Dwayne Gill was running Gilberg's, his Academy for Pro Wrestling, and the guys that came up with me in that period, in the late 80s, early 90s, up into the 2000s, they were still there, still working. They'd already had their runs, like in the WWF or the NWA, WCW, that ECW, those types of things. So when you were able to get in, you were fortunate that you got chances to rub elbows with them, with the likes of Gilbert, with the likes of Rip Sawyer, with Agent Orange, with Hack Myers, Pat Brink. I mean, Keenan. You're talking about a lot of guys who've been a lot of places with a lot of experience, and they were able to share that, and they were willing to share that with you. So that is a big time compliment. And I tell you what, and I've never said this to you, and I mean, it's just all the things that the Father holds inside. Is because when they met you and they saw you, they saw something in you that they could respect. Because you didn't do those things like, I'm this, I'm that, this is my... You were reserved. You did what you're supposed to do. That's a lesson for any of you guys that are getting into this business. Man, humble is where it's at. Be humble, because humble takes you places. Don't be afraid, okay? Don't be afraid to be able to stand up, but be humble and gracious, because it is, here's the word, it's a 4-letter word, it is all a work. And if you're willing to be part of that, guys and girls, when they see you, that ingratiates them to you and you to them. It shows that you're all on the same team. So that's one of the things that they saw in you. You were very humble, that you were willing to learn, that you were a sponge, that you wanted to absorb everything. You didn't come in with an attitude. And that's exactly what you want. You want to be that moldable piece of clay that pulls from every experience that you get by being introduced to people, by having that chance to sit with Gilbert and talk for a few hours, to sit with Ramblin' Rich and Earl the Pearl and talk for a few hours, to sit with the Dan McDevitt's, Nikolai, sit with Nikolai and Andy Weinberg and talk with those guys for hours. And that's how you move along in this business, because you learn about each other, and that builds that mutual respect. But no matter how much talking goes on, all that mutual respect has to be paid off inside that ring, the four corners of that ring. And that's where you have to acquit yourself. Meaning, yep, you could do all the talking that you want, but how do you work in that ring? And that is what is the cherry on the cake, where you get that opportunity to do that. And they see in you that, okay, he is one of us.
And you could feel that right away from the first time that you step into a ring with somebody else and you actually tie up. You know if somebody knows what they're doing or not from just the very basics way. I mean, we were taught to tie up the same way every single time, no matter what. And you could tell when you grabbed a hold of somebody if they knew what they were doing, if they wanted to be here, and what they were doing.
When I hear the name Ricky Blues or the name Blues, I have a certain expectation of what I'm going to get. Just like if you get a Coca-Cola, you know what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So I had an expectation of what I was going to get when I saw you in the ring. And thereby, I had an expectation of what he should be doing as well. Mm-hmm. There was a certain standard set. And I was very happy when I saw that he met and exceeded any sort of expectations that I would have for somebody at that experience level.
Right.
And I thought that was very important, because you built a brand name after all those years. And you're really putting your neck out on the line mm-hmm. when you're letting him use that name.
So I wanted him to earn his bones and develop before he took that mantle and said, I want to try something and make something with this. So I looked at it that way, and that was one of the things that we talked about how important that is. I mean, here's another thing. Take a look at the table in front of us, Tim. My old wrestling trunks, my old wrestling boots. These are gimmicks that Rich made, Arcades, Will's wrestling trunks, and kick pads. It was an honor to pass those down because that's what he wore in the ring. And he had Rich make him his own gimmicks that were very similar to what I had done in the past, with the skull, with the horns, and the fangs, and those types of things, with the fire and the lightning. That was something that was a very early Ricky Blues incarnation. But when you talk about the things like the masks and this, it meant so much to me to pass down a pair of my wrestling boots that my son fit in and could walk in, a pair of my wrestling trunks that he fit in and could work in. And I think that is where we were going with that whole mask idea too, is one day you'll earn that too, but that's a different step for a different reason.
And you had worked two completely different styles
Right.
when you were and you weren't. So when you do put on the mask, there's an expectation of the way that you're going to work. And in the end, I don't think that would have fit the way that I did things anyway. It was a better fit to not put that on.
Right. And that's some of the things that we talked about.
Yeah, because once you know, then you watch you wrestle in your different things, and you're like, yeah, he's not using the same stuff. Wrestles like a completely different person. That takes talent and skill in and of itself.
Right.
To try and keep the mystique of that. Okay, sure, maybe it looks like it's him, but it's not. Man, that guy don't even wrestle the same.
Right. So it is. There's a difference there. Wow. That's a lot of material. That's excellent work there. But I don't want to give them too much because we want to bring them back next week and just continue our story. Tim, what do you think about next week? A little bit more continuation of the story?
I'd like to hear more.
All right. So what we plan for you to do, folks, is part 2 of this. We'll continue next week. So please be sure to join us. Where are we going to stroll, Tim?
We're going to stroll down Concussion Lane.
That's right. And we're going to bring you the end of this story with RK Blues. Folks, please be sure to join us. Thank you.